From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something that you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
And broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Welcome to this Friday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. I am Chase Parham here in the Clark Ford Studio. This morning you're going to get the replay recording of our live show at Funky's last night. Former Ole Miss defensive coordinator Dave Wommack was our guest for our third appearance there at Funky's. We'll be there every Thursday night during the football season for a live show. We'll have special guests, Neal and myself, of course. Jeffrey will come down from time to time. Russell with some recruiting as well. So always stop in. We have drinking, food specials, and much more there on the Oxford Square Funkies for a live show with the Oxford Exxon, and you get that recording the next day every single time. So before we get to that, I will tell you the Oxford Exxon, Highway 6 West in Oxford. Go inside, get the daiquiris, little as $3.99, as big as 44 ounces if you so wish. They got the Speed Pass Plus app. You should download it. You should use it because it's going to save you money at the pump. It's going to make things easy and efficient. And it's also going to make you not have to worry about identity theft or credit card skimmers or anything of that nature as well. You can go next door to the Oxford Crystal. You get the pimento cheese bites. Those are flying off there at the Oxford Crystal. Everybody enjoying the pimento cheese bites. So take advantage of both those things. And again, take advantage of Clark Ford in Amory. 662-257-1900 is the phone number. Highway 25 South in Amory. You call Corey, you tell him you would like a quote, a little as 15 minutes during business hours, you get that quote, and at the end of negotiations, although it's not really a negotiation, you take the quote or you don't take the quote, tell him about the podcast, tell him that's where you heard it from, $500 more off that car at Clark Ford in Amory, so take advantage of that as well. And here we are now with the recording from last night. This is myself and Neal with Dave Wommack on the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
Welcome to this third edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast here live at Funky's on the Oxford Square. Dave Wommack, former Ole Miss defensive coordinator, joining us this week. Just letting you guys know, a couple specials going on in the house tonight. $4 daiquiris, $15 frat boy pizza as well. So take advantage of those. Those switched up a little bit from the first 2 weeks. And as like always, we'll have this recorded, put up in the morning as our Friday Oxford Exxon Podcast. So anyone not here, they don't get a chance at the trivia question first, but they can hear it tomorrow morning. Trivia question, as always, brought to you by Blue Delta Jeans, a $200 gift certificate. We'll get to that in a little bit. It is a Dave Wommack themed trivia question as we get to that in a bit. But first, we'll tell you thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. And you, how's the kids and the family doing today?
Doing great. One of them, my daughter, is here tonight, and got two grandkids up in Bloomington with our son Kane, and my wife is here, so everybody's doing well, thanks.
You've been quite the world traveler since you walked away from preparing defenses every week. You've been to, what'd you say, 33 different states, is that right?
No, not 33 different. We've been out of state.
33 different times.
Different times, so yeah, we've been all over the place.
You were telling me about your trip to Italy. I know people would be, as someone who has always wanted to go to Italy, I know your wife got sick at the end of it, but before that, what was that trip like?
Different. Neither one of us had been out of the country before, and to go to Italy was pretty neat to see Rome, the Vatican, and some of those places, but with her getting sick, it kind of dampened things a little bit.
What is it like for you this time of year? For about 4 decades, basically, August meant bunkered down, fall camp, practices, watching film of practice, getting ready for the next practice, getting ready for the coming season, and now you have a whole lot of more free time. And do you catch yourself missing football this time of year, or are you kind of right now sort of glad to not have to be studying film till 11 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, it's a question I get a lot, and really, it's I miss the games on Saturday, but. Being able to have free time, be my own boss, do what I want to do, I really enjoyed it.
What is the job of as a defensive coordinator, and you were a defensive coordinator for a long time, what goes into an August? How much of your time is focused on day-to-day and, hey, what are we getting installed, and how much are you thinking about the first game coming up, and just kind of take me through the mindset of what that's like, how you balance your time, how you sort of budget your time in just a typical month, not necessarily when you were at Ole Miss or at Arkansas or Southern Miss, or just in general.
Yeah, you know when you come back from your little summer break, and it's usually at the end of July, that it's going to be a grind. But I enjoyed it. I mean, it was football around the clock. You know, you'd get up, and I'd get there at 6:15 in the morning, and we would start on football. And the camp is different, you know, than it used to be, where we used to go when I was at Arkansas with Holtz. It would be 3-a-days, and then got back to 2-a-days, and then 1.5, you know, and so forth. But it's just a grind. And about 10 days out, then you start working on the first opponent of the year. But it's basically laying the background, putting all the inventory of the defense that you want to run through the year, and teaching it to your kids and letting them learning it.
We always talk about retention and different things. How much do they keep from the spring, and how much are you having trying to reinstall, and what are you trying to learn about them during that whole 10 days of camp?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. You know, who's going to be your leaders on the team, who's made the preparation in the off season. Some guys have surprised me in the past, and some guys have disappointed in the past. And it's I think as long as you teach them the fundamentals of the game, and then you get the inventory of what you want to do, the basics of really what you want to do, and you have enough, because you have to be able to adjust with all the different styles of offense that you see in this day and time, personnel packages, etc., and obviously find out who your best players are.
We're going to go through a lot of Ole Miss stuff. We're going to have you take through some games and players and seasons, kind of go backwards and forwards. But I do have to ask you this. You were at Missouri in 1984, and then you spent a year or so at Bemidji State in Minnesota. That's got to be something that almost makes you want to get out of football. It had to be freezing every single day, bleak. I'm imagining this thing where I go, I have to really want a coach to be here right now.
Yeah, I had a friend that I'd known for a long time. In fact, we were roommates in college, and he said, man, you know, there's a job up there, and they need a defensive coordinator. I just got through being a GA at both Arkansas and restricted earnings at Missouri, and said, hey, we'll do it. Well, we've been married about a year, my wife and I, and we headed up there. And when we got to St. Paul, we had a 77 Buick Riviera, and as we were heading north out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, we still had 4 hours to go to Bemidji. So I'd look over there once in a while, and she'd look at me like, I don't know about it. So, yeah.
They had a job, but what would that have paid in 1985? Couldn't have been much.
I think it was a 9-month job, and I think it was $12,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got
just kind of like a journalism job until like 2 years ago.
Yeah, Neil was making that in like 2002. So
yeah. But,
13 at least.
But it really was. It was a neat place. It's the headwaters of Mississippi River, and when you kicked a field goal during the games, it actually went into Lake Bemidji, which led down. So I guess that ball could have gone all the way to New Orleans. Yeah.
It's kind of like McCovey Cove, except field goals.
That's kind of big. It's kind of not quite as cosmopolitan as San Francisco, probably. I'm trying to think. Let's go here. I want to go big picture before we get into some games and stuff. You talked about how your career went. How when you first started it was 3-a-days, and now it's 1-a-days, and it's a completely different thing. The way that defense is taught now, the way that defense is played because of the rules changes, seems quite different than it was probably when you had that first job in Minnesota. How has the game, when you look at the game today, how has the game changed? How different is it teaching the game, especially on the defensive side of the football?
I think it's changed so much in the standpoint of, for example, tackling, the way that you have to tackle and how you used to teach it. We used to always teach the guys in steps from the eyes up, ground up, chest up, garbage, wrap, and drive. We'd start them on their knees in a 6-point stance and kind of work their way up, teaching them the fundamentals of it. And then it got to be a few years ago, you know, the rugby tackle came into effect. And where do you tackle? How do you tackle? And it's really, you know, got to be, you know, can the guys get there and get them on the ground? But you're always trying to find new ways to make things better and easier for the kids, to make it as least complicated as you can, but yet be effective.
Obviously, the safety of the players is paramount. You never want to see a player severely injured, and the spinal injuries and the concussions and all that are a serious thing. Have we gone far? And is the rule now, the way that it's enforced now, is it good? Has football gone too far? Is it going too far? Is there a better way to make the game safe without changing the game fundamentally?
That's $1 million question right there, and it's really it's difficult to answer from the standpoint of, the kids are getting bigger, and they're getting faster, and they're getting stronger. Obviously, the equipment's getting better. It seems to me, because I'm a defensive coach, that all the rules have gone against the defense and gone towards the offense, and I know that people want to see points scored, but I love to see great defense played. But, how do you teach a kid to tackle and not hurt himself and not use your head, and yet the offensive guy can put his head down and lean into you and do that? I mean, and then there's those flash of the second plays that you have to make. It's difficult. With that said, I'm all for the safety, and I hope the equipment and teaching continues in that direction. But I do think the rules got to be stressed, not just on the defensive side. I think they got to be stressed on the offensive side as well. I mean, if a guy wants to get you on the ground and you're putting your head down, where are you supposed to tackle?
You were at South Carolina there for a little bit. Everybody talks about with Steve Spurrier, his management style different, where he's not going to be the guy that's going to be at the office 19 hours a day, different things. How much of that is true? How much of that is fiction? And what was sort of it like to be with him?
Well, I mean, he was a guy that liked to play a lot of golf. I mean, obviously he's a good football coach, but he didn't want to grind the hours. I mean, we were on the defensive side, he was on the offense, and a lot of times we were there many more hours than what he was, but he found ways to win.
Did he spend any time with you guys at all on the defense, or was it all pretty 100% offense?
Yeah, I mean, when we didn't stop somebody, he got mad. He'd come over and get with us.
What was it like going against that offense every day in practice? Because that's not what you saw week after week. Was it difficult to prepare for practice and yet simulate an opponent and that kind of thing?
It was difficult to prepare because I was used to coming from structure all the time, and I'm not anything negative against Spurrier, but if you went out and you had scheduled 20 minutes of pass skill and 40 minutes of team, if pass skill was going good, we'd go 40 minutes and the team would go 10 or 15 minutes, or vice versa. And, it was a little different. He just did things off the cuff, and that's was the way he did them, and he was successful doing it.
Let's get to Ole Miss a little bit. So when you come in 2012, it's a time where the team, you didn't see it firsthand, but 2011, about as bad for morale as a team could be for Ole Miss. They had academic issues, off-the-field issues, and in a lot of ways, Nutt had kind of left things similar to where he picked up and improved under Ed Orgeron at the end of that tenure. When you came in early on and you see this group and everything going on, what's sort of the first impressions that had to be accomplished, and what did you just see from a team standpoint there in 2012?
Well, we just come off of a 10-win season at Arkansas State. In fact, didn't even get to go coach the bowl. It was early in December when we got there. And I can remember being there, of course, hitting the road, recruiting and doing all that. But I remember the first time Paul Jackson and the guys had him out doing their runs and stuff. And I was looking up and down the field, and I kept thinking, this can't be all of them, and where are the players? And honestly, it was like I almost threw up because I knew we had better players at Arkansas State than we had at Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's not just talk. You really believe, head-to-head, that first time.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question at the time. And some of them were young. Some of them really developed and turned into some really good players. But it was like, and you got to, they'd probably taken 2 or 3 weeks off, maybe more than that, because they didn't go to a bowl that year. And it was a little bit scary. It was scary going through spring football and into the fall. And quite honestly, and I'm not bragging here, I thought we did an unbelievable coaching job that year, winning 7 games.
I've told people that. I think it's one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen.
There's no doubt.
How do you get the players quickly to buy in, to trust you, when it seemed like at the time they were much more ingrained to not trust whoever was there at the very beginning?
Yeah, I thought Hugh had a did a great job of motivating them, and the guys wanted to win. Most kids want to be successful. For example, on defense, our guys did not play with their eyes at all, and your eyes tell your feet where to go. And there were some things right off the bat that you could teach them that would make them better quickly. And I can remember, the first couple games and then playing Texas, and then, man, I think they beat us like 55-27 or something like that. And it was like, oh my gosh. And we didn't have any depth, but we made a few changes, got a little confidence playing some two lanes and something like that. And the kids took off from there.
At Oxford Wine and Spirits, conveniently located close to campus on College Hill Road and next to the new Lost Pizza, should be your place to buy wine and spirits. Neil and I shop there regularly. Nothing comes into the store unless it's tasted first and the price has to be at below what they believe it should be. For example, something may taste pretty good, but the price does not have value. It does not come into the store. Everyday price is 5% lower than industry standards. Finally, if a podcast listener goes into the store to stock up for the weekend, they can get additional 5% off wine, 10% off liquor if they spend $150 or more, and say they heard about it on the podcast. And when you go to town this year, make sure Oxford Wine and Spirits is your stop to stock up. Also, the Mid-South growing faster than ever, so let Stacy Berry connect you with the real estate option of your dreams, whether it's downtown, midtown, Germantown, or Collierville. Stacy Berry, the name to know in Memphis. Keller Williams, the #1 real estate agency in the world with #1 in agents, units sold, and volume sold. And the Berry home team is now an integral part of that world-renowned brand. So if you're a first-time home buyer looking to downsize, Stacy will evaluate and determine your current home value and sell it quickly for top dollar. Looking to sell a home, buy a home, or invest in real estate, the Berry home team is the place to know. And let Stacy unlock Memphis for you. 901-481-6420. Stacy Lane Berry at KW.com and the BerryHomeTeam.com. That's Stacy with an E, the name to know in Memphis. Also, once you get the real estate out of the way, Community Mortgage can help you out. Oxford, Memphis, Soto County, and Chattanooga, 30 years old, and one of the oldest mortgage companies in the Southeast, a leader in condo financing and the float-down option, which allows you to lock in the current rate. If rates go down before you close, you get that lower rate. You can find Jason at 662-234-2704 or JLowe, JLOWE at CommunityMTG.com. Also, if you want to take the hassle out of stocking your locker or suite on this game day season, whether it be Vaught Hemingway, the Pavilion, or Swayze Field, Locker Stockers is the people to help you out with that. The customer places the order, and Locker Stockers handles purchase and delivery to your locker or suite before game day. So if you want to lock in that price before the season gets started, give them a call, 662-586-1487, or info at lockerstockers.com. And then finally, the podcast brought to you in part by Tyson Drugs, TysonDrugs.com. They have a great app as well, and they're located in downtown Holly Springs. 662-252-2321 is the phone number to find out more about all their different options, including delivering wherever you are. Also now in Oxford with G&M Pharmacy on South Lamar. They have great local service and local delivery in the Oxford area. Now back to myself, Neal McCready.
Did they kind of have to win an SEC game to really sort of springboard, though? I mean, did it take finally breaking that streak? And I guess at the time it was against Auburn at home that afternoon.
I remember the game. I really do. It was against Auburn, and, I think Auburn was struggling at the time as well. They just won a national championship 2 years before that, and, it was a big day. I think our middle linebacker had an interception and ran one back at the end or something, but
I don't remember that game, Dave. I'll tell you why I don't remember that game.
No, don't tell me.
No, I can tell you why. I got thrown off a lawnmower the day before that game.
Oh.
And one of my hips was about 3 times bigger than the other hip, and I was on painkillers, and I sort of fell asleep sitting in my seat in the press box, and I woke up, and there was 7 minutes left in the game, and I looked at David Brandt to my left, and I said, "Does that say fourth quarter?" And he said, "Yeah, man, you've been acting weird." And I don't remember that game. I went downstairs and I said, "What happened?" I mean, I was studying the play sheet. I'm like, "How did Ole Miss score? Okay, what did Auburn do?" So when you say remember that game, I have no recollection at all.
Well, I want to make sure that I had it right. I'm pretty sure our middle linebacker at the end intercepted, but it was huge being able to win that first SEC game, and I think that first year we win 3, but that was very important.
Yeah, and that's right after, the message boards are known for sane conversation, very thorough, nuanced discussion. maybe the worst day our message board's ever had. The Texas A&M loss, played them close with Manziel and everything right there. You had the 4th and 1 call on offense that they didn't get. What kind of sticks out just where, Mike Hilton does the great job spying Manziel all day. It's that close and just not being able to kind of pull it out for those guys at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of we thought we had like a great plan. And, of course, Manziel, that was the year that Manziel kind of came out and was doing all that he was doing. And did he win the Heisman that year maybe? But
I think you won. Did he win it the next year?
Was it the next year?
I don't know.
But anyway, here was this great quarterback. And I'll say this, as far as college players, and I coached for 38 years, he's, if not the best, one of the top 5 players that I ever went against. And we had a spy against him, and we tried several different things, and we did a great job on him the first half. But what stood out to me was in the 4th quarter, we sacked him. I thought it was a safety.
Isaac Gross.
4th and 18, and the receiver goes over. Our receiver puts his hand on his shoulder and lifts himself over and makes a catch over him, and Manziel took over from there.
Yeah, but I guess that was Mike Evans over Sinquez, if I remember correctly.
You're right.
It was, 4th and 18. Yeah.
Right there on your sideline where he made the play.
Oh, I saw it,
Yeah. You weren't happy with it?
Many times.
Yeah. On a game like that, when a game ends, when you're that close, what's the difference between watching film on a game where it was that close and maybe a game where, like you mentioned, the Texas game that season where it didn't, they got you pretty good? Is it which film is more difficult to watch? The one where you obviously say, hey, we have a lot of work to do, or the one where you're like, oh my God, if we make that play?
Well, it's different because it's scary when somebody beats you as bad as Texas beat us that year, and knew we had to go into the SEC and face some of the people that we had to face. And but the Texas A&M, Arkansas that year, losing at the end like that, you're close. But you're constantly, as a coach, teaching your guys that the next play is the most important play. And regardless of what happened, good or bad, the next play is the most important play. And to play one play at a time is the most important thing you could do. And you learn from all of it. You learn the Texas game. Do you really want to be embarrassed that bad, or you want to do the extra work to get it done, both as a player and a coach? And then, your point gets across. But I'd rather get the point across winning close than losing close.
What was the week like headed into state right there? Because you're 5-6. You need to get the win to get bowl eligible. You got all the recruiting going on at that time, too, where it feels like that 6th win would have been a lot different than a 5th from recruiting, because you get to keep playing, you get to the bowl game, you get to show Robert and Laquan and Laramie, all those guys, significant, tangible process. So what was sort of the mood? What was that week like going into Mississippi State right there?
It was the week was unique, and I remember it clearly because it was like everybody at Ole Miss knew we were going to win. I mean, we just had that feeling we were going to win, and you could feel it warming up and walking on the field. You could feel it in practice that week. And, it was just I think that game right there helped change Ole Miss football for the next few years.
Landing that recruiting class after that, Robert Kimdichie and all those guys, did you think there was so much attention with that day, that recruiting class, the tweet and all the stuff that happened in that short amount of time? Did you think at that point, man, we've really turned the corner quickly in 1 year's time, for when you said, like you said, you got there and you almost were sick to your stomach looking at what you had, to the class that you had coming in, and you guys won a bowl game and had this momentum that really no one could have predicted 12 months out? Did you think, hey, we're turning this thing around quickly?
I remember coming in that first year and sitting in the staff and watching all the film for the first recruiting year, where we only had about 3 weeks to get ready, and how disappointing that it was, on signing day, And we signed some good kids in retrospect after that, but that next year, I think ESPN was here, and we were top 5 in the country in recruiting. And, it just got momentum, and it just kept going and going and going. So there was a huge difference between that year and the year before. There's no doubt about it.
What was sort of your first impressions of Kimdichie when you get him on the field and then think, hey, I can put this guy in a place to actually help me out here?
Yeah. I mean, guys like that are difference makers. I mean, you don't see that many people that can do the things that he can do. And, he had a kind of little football knack. He wasn't a dumb kid either. I mean, he really, knew what he was doing. And Kiffin, I thought, did a great job with him both on and off the field. But we knew he had some talent. But you know what? We made some good moves with C.J. Johnson, and we had some other guys on the defensive line that were pretty good, and it all started up there.
That defense over the next couple of years, I guess it was 14 and 15 when ultimately you had those defenses that were nationally ranked, that were at the top. A guy like Robert got for a number of reasons, the recruiting hype, his ability, his personality, a lot of that. So he got a lot of the hype, and C.J. Johnson was a kind of a media favorite.
Yeah.
Those of us who covered him, I guess by the end of his career, we thought, yeah, I can see why Mike Hilton's really good. But at the beginning, you'd look at him and you're like, here's this guy, he's small, he kind of makes plays, but there's nothing flashy about him. When you look at him now and he's a stalwart in the NFL, I'm guessing you're not surprised in the way that some of us are?
I thought the last 2 years, 15 and 16, there's no question he was the best player on Ole Miss's defense. And I was worried about his size and didn't know if he'd make it in the NFL. Obviously, he's proved everybody wrong from that standpoint. But unbelievable leader. The guy just had great common sense, football sense. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. Study of the game, and probably the most important thing was a tremendous competitor. So, I think he was overshadowed by Sinquez and some of those other guys, but valuable. Started basically from the middle of his first year on.
That 2014 season, fall camp, did you know, hey, I've got a pretty special group here? I mean, I've got impact players at all levels, and we've got a chance to do special things?
Yeah. I mean, we had a veteran group of linebackers, and nobody was outstanding really at linebacker, but they were all good, solid players. I knew Cody Pruitt was an unbelievable quarterback on defense, and he was a coach on the field and was the glue of that defense, if you will. And we were solid, at corner. We were solid on the D-line, solid linebacker. Did I know that was going to be the number one defense in the country? No, but it just worked out that they really played extremely well together and were fun to watch and coach.
That's a good time to get into our trivia question for the day, presented by Blue Delta Jeans. You can tweet at Neil or myself if you have the answer. You can put it up here on a napkin or a Post-it note. However you get it to me, the first person inside to win a $200 gift certificate to Blue Delta Jeans gets this. As Dave said, Ole Miss led the nation in scoring defense in 2014, allowing 16 points per game. Who was number two? The number 2 team in the nation in scoring defense. They were 16.4 points per game. Whoever that was, you give me the answer first, you win from Blue Delta Jeans. That gift certificate.
Was it ULM?
It was ULM, yes.
It was? Okay, good.
Yeah,
that's what I figured.
Good job.
We dominate on defense typically, year after year. We just crush people.
You go into in that 14 season, starting out, you go to Atlanta, play Boise, kind of an ugly first half, and then really turn it on, rout them late in that game. The media doesn't know what we're watching half the time, so we don't count. But as we're watching that, we go, well, is Boise as good as maybe we think? They look really sloppy, and turns out it was because you guys were making them look sloppy for most of the game. So when you come out of that, what are the impressions from that Boise game as it's going on and then after? I mean, did that even heighten your expectations, your excitement about that group?
Yeah, it was, because, I mean, it just usually it takes 2 or 3 games for them to click, and I think it was good that we played, a team of their caliber with all the upsets they had in a couple of years previous to that. And, I mean, our guys came out. I can still hear some of the hits that the guys were making on those guys coming across the field. I remember Keith Lewis hitting a guy, and Pruitt and all of them, and I was just really proud of the way that they went out. And you could see the unity was already there, and the leadership on the field was already there.
The early part of that season was always building towards that Alabama game. As that season got going, that game just flashed on the schedule, if you will.
Yeah.
That day turns out probably in the way that so many Ole Miss fans have sort of dreamed of. The weather was perfect. The college game day came, which was a big deal, and Katy Perry was there, all of that stuff. I know that you weren't thinking about as you're getting ready, but from a pageantry standpoint, it was sort of the way you would draw it up.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that game?
A lot of things. I remember, our guys didn't really think they could be scored on. I mean, they really didn't. They hadn't had that very many points scored on them, and they thought, well, I think Alabama had a decent quarterback. They had one receiver that I knew if we isolated on him and could stop the run that we'd have success against them. I think we gave up a touchdown in the kicking game maybe right before half. Or
a fumble got returned for a touchdown.
Yeah, right before the half. And then I remember shutting them out the second half. I can remember I saw the interception. I saw him get both feet down. Everybody thought it was going to – they'd have another play at the end, and I knew it was over.
So you're in the box at that time, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I saw it when it happened.
So even live, you felt 100% about it?
What's that?
Live, you felt 100% about it?
I knew it. I mean, I knew he was in. And it was another one of those games where you just felt like, you were meant to win it. It was our time. And a couple years before that, in the Houston's last year, they had taken a knee and beaten Ole Miss like 55 to something. So it was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, though, meant to win and everything, but, and Neil mentioned this a little bit, too. I mean, there's 60,000 in that crowd when that extra point's missed that goes, oh, my God, this thing's losing 24-23. I mean, you could feel the stadium kind of go from an air out of it at that point.
But it was interesting, our kids, and I think, Alabama's a great team. I'll give them all credit and Saban and all that other stuff, but our kids really thought they could beat them. And I think even in 16 when they beat us. I mean, our kids, I don't know. I can remember going over there after the Texas game and then the Tulane game, the first year we were there, and our guys knocked like 7 of their guys out of the game, and we held them like 287 total yards on offense. And I know Saban called you and said, man, he said, I don't know if we'll be able to play this now. Everybody was back on Saban. They beat us at the end of the game, but there's something about Alabama getting ready. Our guys love playing them.
We take a break from the show to tell you that this podcast is brought to you by Robert Gambrell and Gambrell and Associates. Robert knows that many of the people listening to this podcast will never need a bankruptcy attorney or a Social Security disability attorney. However, many of you may be interested in reviewing your financial situation to consider asset protection. This is a part of what a good bankruptcy attorney does. And also, many of you have friends and or relatives that get into difficult financial situations. Gambrell and Associates helps many people work through their times of hardship, whether that results in filing a bankruptcy petition or working to avoid a bankruptcy filing. Others are primarily worried about their credit scores. For those people, many times Gambrell and Associates refer their clients to Brian McLaurin, another advertiser on this podcast. Sometimes people find the easiest way to rebuild credit is similar to what the Cubs did. Tear it down, start over. This can be done by filing for relief under Chapter 7 to get a fresh start. Whatever your needs are, you, your relatives, or friends can get a free consultation for 1 hour or more to help make your decision on what is best for you. Check out Robert Gambrell on avvo.com, superlawyers.com, or give him a call, 662-281-8800. This podcast is also brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, look no further than Grenada Nissan, located just off Interstate 55 in Grenada, Mississippi. Grenada Nissan has a complete selection of new and previously owned Nissan vehicles, great lease deals as well. Gene and Sandy have been with the website, the podcast, a long time. They're great people, great service, great product. You will love doing business with the people at Grenada Nissan. It's GrenadaNissanUSA.com. The podcast also brought to you by Harry Alexander. Harry is an Oxford-based RE/MAX legacy realty agent. Harry's been in Oxford more than 4 decades. No one knows the residential and condo market in Oxford better than Harry. Go to his site. He'll prove it to you. It's harryalexander.com. Click on the Properties and Neighborhoods tab. Filter through by what you are looking for, and then send him an email. It's ha@harryalexander.com. And Rebel Nation, 2018 is the year of the fan. Ole Miss Athletics wants to showcase your stories and recognize you, the Ole Miss fan base. Exciting prizes and experiences throughout the year will be featured on omyearofthefan.com and updated often, so be sure to visit omyearofthefan.com. Now back to the podcast.
As good as you played against Alabama and as big as that win was, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask this because I'm curious because you'd coached at so many places. You'd been through so many games. I'm sure huge wins, big losses, all of that stuff. When you see his foot go down, for a moment, do you allow yourself to soak it in, like what that meant for that program, for that school, for that team, that moment, all that stuff? I mean, I know as a coach, it's always, hey, you got to move to the next game. We got to move.
Yeah.
But just for a moment, do you allow yourself to like feel that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I stood up and cheered. It's emotional now. Still is.
What was that locker room like? I mean, I know kids believe they were going to win, but there's a difference between believing you're going to win and then actually doing it.
Special. I mean, it was unique. I mean, it was something that turned the program around. I think it was another big point. I think the Mississippi State game year before was big, but when you beat the perennial national champions and everybody thinks the best team in the country, it's Alabama, so you get a lot of credit, and it's they were proud.
Did you get to the field, or did you just go straight to the locker room? Because the field was a zoo.
I don't even remember. I don't know if I got to the field or not. I don't remember.
Yeah.
One of them said yes, one of them said no.
Well, one or the other.
I don't remember.
So we talk about Alabama, and what I was going to say is the next week you go to Texas A&M immediately, another big game. Yeah. It's a night game over there. They've got the 100,000 they had. Neal's actually running the Chicago Marathon the next morning, so I'm over here in his place instead. And that was as dominant of a game as maybe all year. It ends up being just a 2-touchdown game, but that was not the way the game actually played out. You dominated from start to finish. The focus from that team to kind of not have the letdown, to keep it going right there, is it just because, hey, they experienced success and you're moving forward, or what was it like to kind of keep them engaged and focused throughout going into that game?
I think you have a target on your back at that point, and our guys really felt like they were the best team in the league and certainly the best defense in the league. And, I think it was pride. And then what I said a few minutes ago, really good defenses don't like points scored on them. And they take it personal. The players take it personal. The coaches take it personal. And I think they felt that. In fact, I think we scored twice on defense that night.
And then that was really he was good the whole time, obviously, but that was a coming out party for Laramie Tunsil on the other side. He really handled Myles Garrett well that day. I know we talked to him after the game, and he was kind of joking around about it and stuff. But what was it like for the 3 years to watch Laramie work? I mean, you're obviously not dealing with him day to day, but just to see that special of a talent over there every single day.
He was really a great kid. I mean, he was gifted athletically, but he also worked hard and fun to be around, had a great personality. And you could see from day one that he was different than the rest of those guys.
Tennessee later on, maybe the most dominant game that I remember from an Ole Miss defense, beat Tennessee 34-3. They might have had negative something rushing yards, if I remember correctly. Matchup, just the way it played out. What made that game so one-sided from a defensive standpoint?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they were trying to run the ball, and not many people did run it effective on us that year. I think one of their backs might even got hurt that night, but it was just, it was one of those nights where we couldn't do anything wrong, and they did everything wrong, I guess.
You talk about the highs and lows of a football season. The high obviously was beating Alabama. The low had to be that Auburn loss. Laquan Treadwell gets hurt at the end of it. Yeah. The disappointment of not being able to stop them there at the end. Did that from a morale standpoint, was that season kind of not recoverable from that point? I know you beat Mississippi State, but it was just difficult from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did take a lot of wind out of the sails when Laramie what's his name? Laquan, excuse me. When Laquan got hurt, and I think it kind of scared everybody a little bit too, the way that it happened and all that at the end. And it was disappointing the way that year ended because we were so good on defense.
Did you know he had fumbled the ball? Could you tell as far as possession or anything when that injury happens, what's actually going on with the game?
I remember the next day Hugh coming in saying that the SEC said the way that he broke his ankle, it should have been downed on the 6-inch line. But I don't think I was looking up at the play when it happened. I know I saw the play later on a few times, but I don't remember the play as it actually happened.
That's not just a devastating loss, but it's also the injury to a leader on the team. It's a playoff loss when you're in the top 4, basically right there as well. How do you pick them up at that point? Because I got to think, as good as that Alabama locker room was, that Auburn locker room was probably equally as negative as that was positive.
Yeah, I think it had a lot to do because who we were playing the next week. You know, you didn't have a choice, so you either lay down or pick yourself up, and there's too many good things that happened throughout the season, and try to get Mississippi State.
Yeah, because you had Presbyterian and then the Arkansas thing where Bo gets banged up, and then
okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, playing Presbyterian, we got to play a lot of younger guys, but then Arkansas just kind of became our nemesis there for some reason. Arkansas couldn't win any games, but they could beat us, just like we could beat Alabama. It was crazy.
Could you pinpoint why? I mean, just talking now, but I mean, what allowed that to sort of be the case in your opinion?
I think they're tight end matchups. We didn't match up as our scheme didn't match up as well with them as maybe some of the other teams, and I always felt, I coached at Arkansas for 8 years, 2 different times, 4 years, and it was like, man, we got to beat Ole Miss, we got to be able. So it was the rivalry thing. So we beat them 3 out of 4 years that I coached, and then the last 3 years I got us.
We've got a winner to our trivia question on a napkin over here. Stanford is the answer to that. Stanford finished at 16.4 points for that. Mr. O'Keefe Graham sitting over here is the winner to that gift certificate. So he did not bring me the napkin though, so we probably should split it with the other person over here. But we'll that's a good point. We'll make it work. But anyway, so we'll skip over this because, it ended up 15 season. Neil and I talk about bowl games have very little meaning toward anything, but as that TCU game is playing out, what's even going through your head on just how it sort of snowballed right there?
Yeah, like what's going on? It was like something's wrong here, and they did a great job of scheming us, planning us. I think anytime you stepped out of the SEC, people had a target on the back like we did. And I known Gary Patterson for a long time, knew he was a competitor, and we didn't show up that night.
They would have beaten a lot of people that day.
Yeah.
They were good by the end of that season.
They were a good football team. Don't want to take anything away from them.
Did you sense it at all in the week prior to that? Did you feel things going well or what?
No, I didn't, which, is not good. And, you felt like we were prepared the same way that we prepared for everything else. And week in and week out, and our guys took it serious. We'd won, I think, 2 or 3 bowl games in a row, maybe 2 bowl games in a row before that. And, there was no indications that we were going to do what we did. They were dominating on defense, and we were going 3 and out on the other side of the ball. And defensively, it was they hit us early with a trick play, and they have momentum that kept going.
You had to deal with Laramie's injury in the middle of that game as well.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Going into that 2015 season, there were a lot of high expectations. It was a really talented team. A lot of guys back on both sides of the ball, really.
Yeah.
You guys go over, and I can't remember how the season started. You had some big wins over teams that nobody thinks of, probably teams very similar to ULM.
UT Martin and Fresno State?
Academic powerhouses. Yeah. You go to Tuscaloosa and win in that crazy game. At that point, do you walk out of there thinking, hey, this team's got a chance to do something special? Because that game was nuts.
I think anytime you beat Alabama, you feel like you're a game or 2 up in the league because, if you lose to them, they have to lose twice, and that ain't going to happen. So you feel like, you got a little bit of advantage when you beat somebody like that. And to beat them on the road 2 years in a row, people could tell us in the summer, and The spring before that, you beat them last year, but that won't ever happen again, which I think really helped our team, motivated our team as well. So, you felt good coming out of there.
What were the one or two things that you do remember from that night in that game?
Dominating them the first half and not being able to slow them down the second half. And they had a couple quarterback changes. I think they started the younger guy.
Cooper Bateman.
And you got a heck of a memory. Yeah. And then the other guy came in. He struggled for a while, but then I think we also might have gotten 5 turnovers that night as well.
I remember how hot it was. It was super hot that night. It was really humid, and the game lasted forever. And it was like, but by the end, both teams were just kind of on fumes.
If you make Alabama throw as much as they threw that night, I mean, you got a good chance of beating them. That's just not Alabama football. And, getting the turnovers that we did and scoring. I remember Laquan going over the top of somebody. I think that was the night that the pass was tipped up and it went off, and one of the receivers took it all the way. And, when you're going over there, you don't feel like, you got to earn it on the road to Alabama. So it was satisfying to get the win.
That was a weird season. The next week you guys lose at Florida. Then you come back and you win a little, and then you had what had to be a very frustrating loss at Memphis where Robert gets hurt early on the offensive side. I know you're not the type to criticize coaching. When one of your top defensive players gets hurt as a running back, how frustrating was that as a defensive coordinator?
You'd rather him not be playing in offense.
Yeah.
But, that was like you'd said we dominated Tennessee the year before. The team that we totally dominated was Memphis. And I think we held them like 102 yards, and they were supposed to be all this and all that and everything. And I think we got a little cocky on that game. And I remember that being a really, really hot day as well.
Yeah.
But I think we got a little bit feeling too good about ourselves. And as bad as it was, it did help us recover for some of the other games that were coming up later.
Did you have a kind of a comment the first time Hugh or whoever walks up to you and goes, hey, we're thinking about putting Robert in at fullback. We're going to see what happens here?
Yeah, I mean, I saw him do it practice. He'd come down there, and we need Robert for a couple periods and all that stuff. And
sounds like a good time to veto.
Yeah. Well, head coaches are head coaches, so, I was a team guy. I want to do whatever it takes to win.
That Arkansas game that year, it's still kind of weird to think about it. That was that game that I know you guys struggled with the tight end. Everybody talks about that the fourth and 25 play, and then the conversion play where Marquise gets the sack, but he gets the face mask. When you look back on that game, what sticks out in your mind? Is it that one play, or was it things that happened over the course of the game?
No, it was things that happened over the course of the game, but obviously I'm just like everybody else. That's the play that you remember. I remember it cost us the SEC championship game that year, and I can remember on the fourth down, and we had him on the sideline, and all the guys were taking angles over there to get to him, and then he tosses over his head. I mean, I'd actually even stood up. It was the end of the game. And then it goes into overtime, and we got him sacked. And again, you're thinking, you're excited, and you stand up, and it's like, which means the game's probably over. And, it just meant to be. It was probably the worst defeat I ever had in my career.
To tell you that, guests join our podcast on the Billy's Pecans hotline. Billy's Pecans has a complete selection of pecans, goodies, jellies, coffee cakes. We tell you about the cinnamon spice pecans all the time. The toasted pecans are awesome. All sorts of chocolate pecans, milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate, chocolate amaretto, chocolate Grand Marnier, the cheese crispies, I should say, the coffee cakes. Everything's great at Billy's Pecans, whether you're getting ready for a high school tailgate, getting ready for a college tailgate, getting ready to make a road trip to Houston or wherever. Billy's Pecans is a great option. You'll be thrilled that you have some Billy's Pecans with you on your tailgate, on your trip. It's billyspecans.com or 1-800-624-7404. The podcast is also brought to you by 7 South Tailgating. 7 South celebrating 10 years of business this season. Try 7 South once. You'll never tailgate without them again. 7 South will set up your own personal gear, or you can rent everything from them. No one matches their customer service, their attention to detail. Whether you're coming up for one game this fall or all the games this fall or anything in between, whether your tailgate is intricate or really very simple, 7 South can take care of you. 7southtailgating.com. If you're in the Birmingham area and you're in the real estate market, perhaps get in touch with Megan Phillips with LAH Real Estate. She's the person to call for all your real estate needs in the Birmingham area. With almost a decade of experience, Megan's knowledge and expertise can help you buy or sell your home today. So please visit her website at meganmphillips.com. That's MEAGANM Phillips.com. Or call Megan at 205-602-7929. Again, 205-602-7929. And this podcast is brought to you by Oxford University Bank. OUB is locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB gives you the comfort of home, all the benefits the big mega banks provide, all the technology and products you can want, all with the personal touch. When you call OUB, you speak directly with the live person. There's no 10 buttons to press, no 5-minute wait. OUB also offers its customers the absolute best cash checking account. It's called Kasasa. And with Kasasa, OUB will pay customers 2.5% interest on their balances up to $50,000. And with Kasasa, ATM fees nationwide are refunded. OUB also offers online bill pay and mobile check deposit using its online app. To learn more about OUB, check out liveoxfordbankoxford.com or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured.
Yeah, you guys kind of bounced back from that. I remember thinking when you all lost that game, I thought, man,
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody gets back up the next week. I don't know how anybody gets back up again, because that's devastating. You could imagine what it must have felt like. I mean, I can try at least. Yet you guys kind of dominated the rest of that season. You dominated State. You crushed Oklahoma State. When you look back on that season, are you more proud of the way that you finished it, or is there a part of you that says, "Wow, what could have been"?
Oh, probably because of my personality, what could have been. And what I said a minute ago, the SEC championship, was on the line. Of course, we would have had to beat Mississippi State, but I think we would have. And I think it was difficult going over there and playing, but we jumped on them early and stayed on them. And
dominated them.
We did.
Yeah.
We did that night. But it still hurts because you don't get that many chances to play for SEC championship. I only got one time in my career, and that was with Arkansas. And Georgia beat us that game, so I never won an SEC championship.
I hated it because I'm a proponent for the 8-team playoff, and you guys were about to either be in the playoff or you were going to be the poster child for an 8-team playoff.
Yeah. I mean, we were probably going to be there. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that one.
And if you get in, either Alabama or Ohio State becomes the poster child for an 8-team playoff because somebody was going to get squeezed out. That's
right. That's exactly right. I mean, both the Mississippi schools were good that year, and I thought we had a really good football team.
Getting off that for a second, you mentioned 2015. Obviously, it was the year where Chad Kelly ends up with the third most total offensive yards in SEC history behind Johnny Manziel's 2 seasons. When you watch him, ends up being the last pick of the draft, and now he's making a push for at least the second string with the Broncos. What did you sort of see from a pro potential out of Chad while he was at Ole Miss?
I mean, you could see it from the spring when he got in there that he was like an unbelievable competitor. I mean, he'd get mad when he didn't complete a pass in practice, and he wouldn't get frustrated. He'd get it fixed. I thought Dan did an unbelievable job. Dan Warner did an unbelievable job with him, coached him. He had a confidence but was never cocky. I mean, he would come down and spend time with the defensive coaches and ask questions, and not everybody did that. So the guy was passionate. and he was a competitor, and he was a winner.
Did you know after that 2015 season that from a recruiting standpoint, maybe you guys as a staff weren't getting some of the defensive type players that you needed to continue what you had accomplished? I mean, we talked about 2014 where you were a dominant defense. Statistically, you were a very, very good defense in 2015. You're losing some of those players. Did you know this was happening? I know you did.
Yeah.
Was this something that got discussed in the rooms that, hey, we're not bringing in the kind of defensive players that we need?
Yeah, I mean, we lost some really important players, and especially at the linebacker position in recruiting wars. That would have made a big difference for us. And then we were thin at places in the secondary. In 16, we lost, Mike Hilton and Trey Elston. And really the bowl, Ken Webster was the best player in the secondary by far coming back. He gets hurt early in the season. It all sounds like sour grapes, but, there's no question that we weren't as talented in 16 as we were in 13, 14, 15.
Is there a main reason for any of the struggles with linebacker recruiting and stuff during those years?
Well, I think you go after the best guys that you can get, and we would go out after the top dogs. I can remember we almost got Raekwon Smith. I mean, Leo Lewis, which everybody hates that name. I mean, we thought we had him clear up to the end, and I can name about 5 guys that were like that. There's a junior college player out in California that we thought we had in. We lost him. I can remember being so disappointed after that 15, I guess it would have been 16 recruiting season because, we were going to have to do it a little bit with mirrors. I knew that.
Is that the balance sometimes of trying to figure out, hey, we go up for the top guys, then you figure out is that B player or somebody who can become an SEC player, but you also don't want to obviously just sign a guy to sign a guy. So I got to think from an evaluation standpoint, that's a very fine line there.
Well, it is, and you end up taking the next guy, and sometimes even a mid-major school will be after the next guy. Been on him all along hard, so obviously we made some mistakes in recruiting with some of those positions.
What was that season like? I mean, for you, because I know you'd had a long, distinguished career. I think you'd probably made the decision that, hey, I'm going to hang it up after this season in all likelihood. As that season unfolds, how frustrating was it for you and also just the kids that you coached? I mean, watching how hard it was just to make stops, to get off the field, and just to see. I can remember 2 or 3 times. I mean, you were always, and I don't say this just because you're right here. Chase can vouch for this. You were always a very stand-up guy. Whether it went well, whether it went badly, you came into that room and you answered questions and you did your job. And not everybody in your profession does that.
Right.
But it had to be. There were times when you could see the pain in your eyes. It had to be very frustrating.
It is. I mean, I've been fortunate to have some good defenses. My wife and I had discussed a couple years before that when we were going to retire. And, you just, you hate going out like that. You really do. But I knew it was time. And, it was painful. It was painful, not the retirement, but going through that year. Because, a lot of the people, Ole Miss deserved to have some success. They'd fought through so much throughout the years, and to end it like that was very difficult.
I want to ask you about Matt Luke in a minute. Before I do it, I feel like I'm compelled to ask you about the end of the Hugh Freeze era. Where were you when you heard the news about Hugh Freeze, and what was your reaction when you heard it?
Yeah, when we first heard that the stuff was coming out, that Houston's lawyer was getting ready to turn over, my wife and I were in Denver airport, and then actually I think we were coming home from a funeral. Our daughter-in-law's grandfather had passed away, and I think we'd just gotten home, and somebody called us and said, might have been Kane, said, turn on the TV, and I had no idea. I was shocked. Shocked. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It caught me by surprise.
You worked with Matt Luke a lot. You worked against him in practice all the time. When he got the interim job, did you think, hey, this is a guy who's ready to be a head coach? He's groomed to be a head coach? Because there were some people in the profession that were like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work out. And then I talked to some other people who said, this is a guy who's going to surprise you. He's more ready for this than you think he is.
You think all those things, but Matt had kind of groomed himself, I think, and was working towards that for a long time. I don't think he ever wanted to take the head coaching position the way that he got it, but I think I'm a big Matt Luke fan, and I think that Matt will do a great job. I don't think you could find anybody that's more passionate. I think he's a tremendous recruiter. I think he's smart enough to know when to step back from certain things when he needs to. I think the players will rally around him. I think he did a great job winning 6 games last year, and I wish him the best of luck. I hope they have great success, but I think it's a very, very difficult job here for the next couple of years. And I mean, you hate to say that, but in reality, I mean, if he wins 6 games, he's done a heck of a job. But I hope they'll give him a chance, and I think they will, to let him build this thing, because I think he can do it.
Your son Kane, you mentioned him.
Yep.
A friend of mine, I don't know if Chase and he are friends as well. He's at Indiana. You're going to get to see a lot of games. When you watch a game now as the dad of a coach on the staff, it's a completely different thing, I'm guessing, than the guy that's prepared all week and all that. Do you watch it more as a fan? Do you get more emotional than you did when you were a coach and you're having to think play to play, or do you catch yourself sort of defensive coordinating in the stands?
I really get mad at the offense when they go 3 and out, or they turn it over and put him in a bad position. But I don't think I'm a very good fan. I mean, I don't like to go to the games, and I get upset at the games sometimes if things aren't going well. It's not fun for me to sit in the stands. I mean,
is it kind of torturous to sit up there?
Yeah, it is. It is. My wife goes.
Can y'all sit together at the game, or do you have to kind of go pace the concourse?
We start out sitting together.
She kicks you out of the section?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
How engaged were you with, you called an Ole Miss game on this past season, just stuff's on television or watching. What are you kind of watching or seeing as you're, because obviously you expected to be a part of that staff, at least going into the whatever. So how do you sort of see those players, and what was going through your head through the 17 season?
Yeah, it's just hard to watch them. I really didn't watch them but a couple times. I love watching college football. I went to the game because my son opened. He was a defensive coordinator at Southern Alabama, so they opened with Ole Miss. Right. So I went to that game in person, but after that, I only saw a couple of games, of the Ole Miss games. It's hard because you're used to being there and being involved with it and being on the inside of it, and you're on the outside. It's totally different.
Last couple of things. You mentioned Johnny Manziel as one of the guys that was almost impossible to stop. You look back at your career. Who are the maybe 3 or 4 guys that the week ahead when you're getting ready to go against them, that you're watching that guy on film and you're like, I don't know how we're going to do this. That guy just jumps off the screen.
What was Georgia's running back's name a couple of years ago, the big one? There was 2 of them.
Chubb.
Yeah, Nick Chubb and Sony Michel.
Yeah, Chubb. I remember him saying, this guy is, I think they listed him at 220, and we warmed up beside him when we were over there in Georgia playing him, and I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's like 250 pounds and he could run like a deer. So he was pretty special. I can remember playing in 1980 Sugar Bowl against Alabama, and pretty much their whole offense back then was like unbelievable. I mean, they had some great players. I can remember the 2 best teams I remember going against were the 1979 season, 1980 Sugar Bowl Alabama team, and then the SEC championship we played when I was at Arkansas was the Georgia team. Was unbelievable, and that would have been 2001, maybe 2002.
It was like one of Rick's first teams, right?
Yeah, I would guess it was might even like David Green.
David Green was on that team. Yeah. But just individual players. I mean, Manziel was a great player. Nobody really stands out as being other than him to me.
Well, Dave, we really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much for coming out. It was fun to catch up with you. You were one of those guys that was, for me at least, and I've covered a lot of programs and been around. Like I told you, I don't just say this. You're one of those real stand-up guys that after a win, after a loss, you took questions, you answered questions, and as someone who's covered people who weren't always that way, I really appreciate it.
Well, you're more than welcome. I appreciate y'all having me here.
Thank you for
Dave Wommack, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have this up in the morning. Be back next week. At that point, just 2 days away, less than 48 hours from Ole Miss and Texas Tech when we return here next Thursday. So we'll talk to you then.